So I am delighted to speak today with Anita Zielina, who is the Chief Product Officer for NZZ in Switzerland. Thank you for joining me tonight.
Thanks for having me.
And you are joining me from Zurich, where it is Friday evening. It is about 8:30 possibly
Yes,
there. So I really appreciate your weekend time to speak with me.
of course.
So why don't we get started where you can talk a little bit about your background and how you got to become the Chief Product Officer at this organization.
Sure. So actually, I started in journalism, always on the digital side of things, but really producing journalism, writing mostly politics and education topics at a news organization in Austria, Der Standard. I pretty soon realized, like after 5, 6 years into journalism, when I kind of started to climb the ranks and got my first leadership role, that I was more interested in the strategic part, in basically kind of co-creating the vessel rather than just filling it with content. I just realized that there were people who were more excited about the writing and producing part and probably even better in it. And that I had a lot of fun figuring out the path of how to develop products, how to iterate on strategy, how to figure out how we deal with social, with distributed content, with apps, with newsletters. So it was kind of an iteration when I started to move into product. And the role before this one was still on the editorial side, but it already had like 70 or so percent were productish in a way, but it was still called editor in chief. And this role for the first time is really on the business side, let's say, of things, or tech side, whatever you may call it, as chief product officer. And this is where I feel that this is actually what I've already been doing in the last years, but now it's officially called product, and now it's officially called business side of things. So it was kind of a development, because when I started in digital journalism, product as a job didn't really exist.
And you were a night journalism fellow, as I was. We were different years.
Yes.
How did that contribute to your development to where you are now?
So that contributed a lot, because when I actually, the reason for me to apply for the Night Journalism Fellowship in 2010, that was when I applied, was that I kind of felt I kind of outgrew my organization to a certain extent. I felt like I kind of, I played it through in a way. And I felt I wanted to be surrounded by people who I could learn from and not be the one teaching others, because I was at that time still pretty young and pretty junior in my role, but already was the one kind of teaching product and teaching digital to others. So I think that was what brought me to apply for the fellowship. And what it did, of course, is it kind of even more triggered this willingness to work with innovation, and this it did this one thing that I think most Night Fellows know what I'm talking about, or most people who have been exposed to innovation environments know what I'm talking about. It makes it impossible afterwards to not see opportunities and possibilities. So what it did is I came back from this fellowship and I just realized there is so much more that I can do, and there is so much more impact that I can have than just writing content. And I don't want to say that in a negative way, because all I do is creating products and strategies around content, and it's extremely exciting for me. But I just realized that I could have bigger impact, and my skills are more valuable on the strategy, product, and management side of things.
I can totally relate to that. I can definitely identify with coming out of Stanford and having a totally different perspective on what your role is going forward. Right. So for people in the US and maybe in other places who aren't familiar with NZZ, can you talk a little bit about that organization?
Sure. So NCT is one of Switzerland's 3 big media houses that has like a flagship paper that's probably comparable to FT or Wall Street Journal. Very high quality, high level, pricey, bit politics and economics focused. But it also has several regional papers, radio stations, magazines, and such. It's a very traditional organization, one of the oldest newspapers that still exists in Europe. Older than the New York Times. So and it is moving fast towards digital transformation. People a few years before I came realized that to keep NZZ's journalism alive, it has to become and it has to adapt to user behavior. So when I came there about 2.5 years ago, this process was already starting. So what I found there was an organization that was very focused on their tradition, but still very willing to innovate for the sake of keeping their, their core and their DNA and their journalism alive.
I would like to know what it means to be a chief product officer. What are your general responsibilities?
Basically, there are three major teams that report to me. One team is the product responsible for innovation in terms of really developing new products with a user-centric approach. The second team is the product management team. That's the team that is responsible for our existing digital products and is responsible for growing and scaling those products. And then there is the third team, that's the audience management team. And that's the team that closely interacts with the newsroom and with the journalists and is responsible to, let's say, use our content to drive KPI and drive conversion. It's basically the team that helps the newsroom to deliver content that engages people and drives KPI. And those are the three major teams. As you can imagine, they are kind of closely connected with each other and closely working together. And they're also closely working together with IT, with editorial, with engineering, with marketing, with the data teams. And one of my responsibilities, of course, to lead those teams and to drive those products. But then an added responsibility is that I'm kind of the innovation person in the management team of NZZ. So I'm the one kind of assessing opportunities in the market. I'm the one constantly bringing, trends, explaining the trends to the management team and trying to bring that into practice for some of our management team who are not so close to innovation or to kind of tech innovation like I am.
And can you describe some of the digital products that your organization is working on or has worked on?
Of course. I mean, so in general, it's not that different from most other news organizations. It's websites, it's apps, and then it's anything kind of surrounding those websites and apps. So that's the easy explanation. To get a bit more into detail, our organization is very much focused. So we decided 2 years ago that we are very much focused on conversion and on paying subscribers rather than advertising. That was a huge mindset shift, and it changed a lot in the way how we create products and how we develop and iterate on products, because it meant that everything we do, every feature we think about, every service we think about, every tech change we do has to somehow pay off in terms of driving our KPI of paying subscribers, and has to somehow kind of fill the funnel to, at the end, have more paying subscribers, more than in the beginning. So what we work strongly with, for example, are algorithms and personalization algorithms, because we see in our data that personalized content and personalized products that deliver a kind of unique experience have much higher conversion rates. We see, for example, also that newsletters that include an algorithm, that have like a personalized content that is just for you, things that you didn't read last week, but that you might be interested in, things connected to your usage behavior, have a much higher conversion rate than just plain newsletters that are one size fits all. So our main stack of products is actually pretty, similar to most news organizations, but we try to include features and data sets in those products that make them unique for our users.
Mm-hmm. I was just reading this morning the report by the Tao Center at Columbia about artificial intelligence. It just came out today. And one of the comments in that report had to do with engineers not really having the capabilities to understand the journalistic sensibilities and ethics, and it was something that even the engineers are becoming concerned with. So how do you build journalistic practices into your digital products, and what else is different about product management in a journalism organization?
Yes. So I think one of the secrets, and I think thankfully a lot of organizations have discovered that, is you need interdisciplinary teams. If journalists build products without product expertise, that's not going to end well, because they usually think that they actually know already what the product should be like. So journalists very often have a hard time engaging with the user and being user-centric in terms of product development, because they already think they have the answer.
Right.
That's what journalists do for a living, which is perfectly fine. Engineers, many of them don't question why they are doing what they're doing, which is not to say that they don't want to question it or are not intelligent enough to question it. But usually in recent decades, engineering in newsrooms or engineering in media organizations, it used to be that just editors and whatever editors in chief just gave the engineering team already exactly what they should kind of work on and what they should program. So they just weren't used to, being part of a workshop or a conversation or a product development. And then on the third side, there is kind of business and the typical like old-fashioned business side of media organizations, who didn't really think about the journalistic side of things, but they also had no idea about the IT and engineering side of things. So it's kind of three separate worlds, and each one of those worlds on their own cannot build good products that are successful for the user. So I think one of our biggest learnings is, even if it kind of means learning to speak each other's language, even if it means that you in the beginning struggle to kind of get to a mode that works for all, the secret of good product development and good product management is that you have interdisciplinary teams that work together, and that kind of everyone puts in her strengths or his strengths, and together it's more than just the sum of the capabilities of one part of the team.
So that relates to my next question, which has to do about skills. Obviously, you hire a wide range of people in your organization. What are the kinds of things that you're looking for people that are moving into product management roles?
So interestingly, that was something that I talked exactly today. I talked to someone that I'm probably going to hire, and the reason that I think this person is going to be great as a product manager is, one, ownership. So he's really someone who wants to be responsible for something. I think you can only be a good product manager if you're willing to show ownership, and if you want to have ownership. You just need to be excited about the product, and you cannot have like a niche mindset where you say, well, I'm responsible for a product. I'm not going to talk to editorial. I'm not going to talk to engineering. I don't care about the marketing side. You're basically the owner, the person in the driver's seat, the mom, the dad, whatever you may call it. You need to be everywhere for that product, and you need to be passionate about growing it and scaling it and bringing it to market and keeping it on the market, which involves an ability to talk to a lot of different people. It's very different to talk to the engineering team from talking to the editor, from talking to the marketing person, talking, to the service team that's kind of responsible to deliver the product. You need to be able to kind of have this mindset where you like to talk to diverse teams. You cannot be a person that's like more comfortable in their own little niche. You have to be very interdisciplinary, and you have to be, you have to like change in a way. You have to be someone who is constantly questioning, is this like the best it can get? You have to see opportunities, and you have to thrive from this feeling of grabbing them and developing things and changing things. I think those are, and it's less about skills. I don't care at all if someone knows how to program. I don't care at all if someone has worked in a product team before. I have amazing journalists who became product managers. I have amazing engineers who became product managers. I have people who haven't done either journalism or engineering and became great product managers. It's more about the mindset rather than skills per se.
I'm definitely finding that out. The more people that I talk to, is that the technology skills are really the least that are looked for. Some sort of tech sense or understanding of the tech environment is obviously required, but the skills in terms of communication, leadership, strategy, and the mindset. I love the way you talked about the sort of commitment to something and being really passionate about it. So given that, what advice do you have for students as I'm talking to my students or some of my alumni who are early career professionals? What advice do you have for them if they want to move into product management?
Yes. So the first advice that I'd give everyone and that I also give people who ask me is just do something, like start something. I think the worst feeling that I get is when I often talk at universities, am in seminars or workshops or whatsoever, and then I constantly ask, so who has a blog? Who started something together with peers? Who is doing something besides university that's somehow media related? It's like probably 5% that kind of raised their hand when I asked it. And this is something, I think that's something so easy. You don't have to do something that takes you 20 hours a week, but just start something, whether it's a tiny, like a hackathon or a workshop you do together with others, a tiny conference thing, start a blog, I don't know, write something, try to go to a hackathon and program something, whatever it is, a stupid chatbot or anything like that. I think just getting into this mode of doing rather than just waiting for someone to pay you for doing it as a proper job. I think that's the biggest leap, because whenever I hire people for junior positions, I never look at their resume in terms of what classes did they take at university. I think I never in my life looked at the resume in terms of what classes did they take. But if someone kind of started something and I can feel that this is a person who wants to do something and who just cannot sit still and needs to experiment, then I don't care at all about grades and I don't care at all about legacy experience. If I feel that there is someone who wants to, have an impact and is also willing to, take those steps to be able to have this impact and is applying to positions and can kind of translate this passion, then that's basically all I'm looking for.
And there's really no excuse because there's so many opportunities for students to be able to make something. They have a camera on them at all times with their phone. It's very simple to start up a website or a blog. And I keep hearing that from professionals over and over, that they want to see what students are doing in their spare time to demonstrate this passion, what they're excited about. So that's definitely excellent advice.
And then once you get the opportunity to do an internship or whatsoever, just leave a mark there. I mean, if someone already hired you to do an internship, there is two ways you can do an internship. One is you can just be there and just live through it for 2 or 6 months and then you're gone and no one remembers you. Or the other is you can leave, have a lasting impact and leave a mark and do something there where people afterwards will say, wow, do you remember this intern? He or she, I don't know, developed this wonderful idea that we are now working on. And this can kind of lead to your first real job or role.
Great. To wrap things up, let's think about the future. Obviously, that's something that I'm sure you're thinking about all the time strategically. Yeah. What do you think about the future of product management and journalism? Where does it go from here? There's certainly a lot of potential for organizations to adapt these processes. So how do you think that's going to roll out?
Well, I think for a lot of the not so, let's say, modern news organizations, I think they don't have product management yet. So I think in the next 3 to 4 years, there will be a huge demand for product managers. That's something that I see. I mean, I just feel that a lot of news organizations who are not that far advanced and ahead of the curve, they are just figuring out that there is something called product development or product management, because in the past they used to work a lot with external agencies, but they all realized that this is not having a lasting impact on their organization and that they have to have someone in-house to kind of connect those dots. So I think that's the first step. And then like in the midterm, in like 5 to 10 years, I feel that product, and this is something that we see at tech companies like Facebook or Google, who are product-driven product driven companies, I think that this is going to happen to a certain extent to some editorial companies. Probably not overtaking editorial as the most important part of things, but somehow being equal with editorial. And if you look at, for example, the Washington Post, when they now kind of put product people in leadership roles in the newsroom, or if you look at Facebook that puts like former newsroom product people in leadership roles in product, I think that's kind of showing the path where it could go.
Well, thank you so much. I agree that this is definitely a potential area that has a lot of opportunity for newsrooms as well as for people moving into newsrooms in the future. And I think your perspective provides a good validation that what we're seeing across the US is also happening on a global basis. So thank you so much for joining me this evening.
Thank you so much, Cindy, for having me.